Good morning. You're all very welcome to this morning's live webinar event here on the farm of the O'Loughlin family outside Monasterevin in County Kildare. I want to thank the O'Loughlins and Shane in particular for hosting us here. We have a very busy morning. My name is Pat O'Keefe, Corporate Affairs in Glanbia Ireland, and this morning's event is in conjunction with the European Milk Forum, the National Dairy Council and Glanbia Ireland. And we have a very busy morning. We've packed programme, 1 hour, with 2 sessions, Sustainability in the Marketplace and On-Farm Sustainability in Action, where we look at what's happening on the O'Loughlin farm and other farms around the country. I want to take this opportunity on behalf of Glanbia Ireland and the European Milk Forum to say particular thanks to Shane O'Loughlin for hosting us here on his farm this morning. He provided a lovely setting. He didn't provide great central heating to keep us warm, but a very lovely setting, and we're very grateful to Shane. I also want to thank Teagasc and Borbia for their help in the run-up to the event. And look, the main purpose of the event is to look at the response of Shane and other dairy farmers like him to the climate change challenge and to the evolving needs of consumers. And we're going to understand more and learn more about that. So to set the scene, we'll start with just a short video to outline this morning's event.
I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to the O'Loughlin family farm. I'm a third generation dairy farmer here in Oghill, Monasterevin. Sustainable farming is very important to, I suppose, the future of the farm here in Oghill. I try to farm in an environmentally friendly way as possible because I want to leave the farm in the best shape as I can for the next generation. And I've 3 kids, Hugh, Tom and Emma, and hopefully one of them might decide, in years to come to take it on. During the virtual farm walk today, we're going to have a look at the nutrient management plan here on the farm, carbon footprint of the farm taken from the results of the farm sustainability report from Borbia, and we're also going to have a look at the biodiversity here on the farm. Also then we're going to have a look at the breeding plan on the farm here, have a look at the EBI of the herd.
The European Milk Forum EMF campaign is about connecting the public with the dairy production system and demonstrating how that system is sustainable, both in the way that the produce is produced, but even more importantly, how the dairy product portfolio forms part of a sustainable diet. We have currently a knowledge among Irish consumers that a grass-based system is superior, but what we also need to educate people on and build trust around is that the Irish dairy farmer is progressive when it comes to the challenge of climate change, and that things are being done on farm today that are really going to transform Irish dairy system so that the next generation is receiving dairy farms in better condition than they would have been handed over to those who are handing it to them.
Here at Glanbia Ireland, every day we work with nature to bring the passion of our Irish farmers to the world. We're really pleased to be involved in this important event here on the farm of Shane O'Loughlin in County Kildare. Shane continues to show sustainability leadership by the actions he's taken here on the farm. As a previous participant in our joint knowledge transfer programme with Teagasc, Shane would have concentrated and focused particularly on improving productivity, performance and profitability of the herd, whereas now he has a new focus on the economic and environmental sustainability of his farm. Shane is working from his Borbia farmer feedback report to take the actions needed to reduce his carbon footprint, enhances water quality, air quality and biodiversity. So I'd like to thank Shane for sharing his sustainability journey with us today and help us to understand how to sustainably farm in a changing environment.
So a very good overview there. And during the course of this morning's event, there's the opportunity for you at home to ask questions by sending a text message or by sending an email, and the details that you use will be coming up across your screen. The email address is hello@glanbiaconnect.com, but keep an eye on your screen for the opportunity to ask a question, and I have the questions coming in to me here live, so I can ask them of the panel. So to introduce my first panel, I have over on my right, Deirdre Ryan is Director of Origin Green, Sustainability and Quality Assurance at Borbia. I have John Murphy, who's the Chairman of Glanbia Ireland, Zoe Kavanagh, who's the CEO of the National Dairy Council, and we have our host farmer, Shane O'Loughlin. So to set the scene, we just have a very brief presentation from Deirdre. It's not a very long number of slides or anything like that, just a very brief overview. We asked Deirdre, to set the scene in terms of sustainability in the marketplace. And over to you, Deirdre, now, just to give us some context.
Great, thanks Pat, and thanks Shane for inviting us to your farm today and to see the sustainability progress in action. So as Pat said, I'm going to share a few slides on an extensive research that Board Bia conducted recently on the consumer and customer perspective on sustainability. And we really do see that the sustainability agenda is accelerating from a consumer perspective. So we researched 11,000 consumers globally and asked them a variety of questions around sustainability and really probed to understand what they understand by it, what has changed over the past number of years and where they see the future for sustainability. And we see that 43% of consumers globally, of those 11,000 consumers, feel that sustainability is essential or very important when they're making their grocery purchases. But it is still behind taste and origin and taste, origin, as well as other sustainability factors like taste. But essentially, sustainability is growing in the agenda, and it's a good story for Ireland because about 60% of consumers globally associate Ireland with sustainability. Over the past 12 months, this has also changed, and we see the accelerated pace of change with 75% of consumers having made more sustainable choices in the past 12 months with COVID, which is great for us again. So there are definitely nuances per market. And we see that, you know, for dairy as well, quality, naturalness and animal welfare are the key attributes that consumers are looking for. When we move to markets like Asia, they may be more focused on food safety, as well as quality assurance. But then when we move to a market like Germany, they're more interested in emissions, regenerative agriculture and more nuanced sustainability factors. We also see sustainability leads focused on regenerative agriculture and water quality. So really the agenda is accelerating and the nuances around the sustainability conversation are increasing. We also decided to look at customers of Irish food and drink. So the global customers, the Nestlé's, the Barry Callebaut's, the purchasers of Irish dairy. And 3 in 4 of those trade buyers say that sustainability is essential in their business and for their particular role. And as well as 61% saying that their consumers are more and more interested in sustainability. And these are the buyers of Irish dairy globally. But increasingly, we see that they want proof points. So 72% want sustainability credentials and they want us to prove it. And things like, you know, the Origin Green programme, 48% say that it is driving purchase. So we do need the more detail in the agenda going forward. So with that, you know, the SDAS that Shane takes part in the audit every 18 months, you know, the proof points around the decreases in carbon emissions are becoming increasingly important as those global customers are setting Scope 3 emissions reductions targets and so on. So we have to provide them with that proof. And look, we have a great story to tell here in Ireland. On Shane's farm, we'd see a 6% decrease just even since the last audit, and the average SDAS has decreased by 6.3% over the past number of years. And the farm feedback report is really a guidance for farmers that we'll hear about later today. We've worked on this with Teagasc to be able to give them more simplified guidance on how to reduce emissions, how one audit compares to the next. And so we look forward to hearing more of those practices from Shane later today. So thank you.
Thanks, Deirdre. Yeah, no, very good to set the scene. But I suppose the question that's always asked, particularly by farmers, is, you know, is the consumer willing to pay more for sustainability, or is it just something that they expect as a requirement to do business with a country like Ireland? So, will the consumer pay more to support Shane making the investments on the farm to, you know, reduce carbon footprint, for example?
So when we asked in this particular study of the 11,000 consumers whether they are willing to pay more, they do, 72% see it as a barrier, you know, that there is a green premium. But again, you know, it is that finding that sweet spot between healthy for me and healthy for the environment. Things like grass-fed attributes and animal welfare practices that consumers are willing to pay that little bit more for. 20% said grass-fed is something that they are willing to pay more for. as well as organic in certain markets. So it really is a journey that we need to go on and connect with the consumer around those attributes that they understand, because there is that barrier between our understanding of what sustainability is on farm practice and the consumer. So we really need to work harder on the communications again, on how we can connect them to the farm practices.
Okay, good. Thank you, Deirdre. John Murphy, you're a farmer, but you're also chairman of Glanbia Ireland. Is Glanbia Ireland interested and active in this area in terms of ensuring that farmers are sustainable, and also, that the market sees the company as being sustainable?
Yes, thanks, Pat, and again, glad to be here, Shane, on your farm here in sunny Monasterevin this morning, so it's a privilege to be here. Look, I can assure you, like in Glanbia, we're totally committed to this process. Like all sectors of society, agriculture have to sign up now and meet our carbon emissions budgets. We're committed to doing that. Our farmers are absolutely committed to doing that. It's a new challenge for farmers, it's a new challenge for the company. But farmers are up for this challenge, and that's the question we're getting. Like, they're looking for direction, they're looking for what do I have to do. But I always argue farmers are environmentalists. They are the original environmentalists. And anybody who's staycation around Ireland today, just see our countryside and see our biodiversity and the beautiful, well-kept and well-maintained farms. So it kind of annoys me a little that sometimes we hear the environmentalists with all these issues, but really, we're all on the same page here. So we're up for it in Glanbia big time. I think we've been ahead of the curve really on this whole sustainability piece. We've been working on it for many years now, led by a specialist sustainability hub. And I suppose that culminated this year in the launch of our Living Proof sustainability strategy. And in that strategy, our objective is, for each litre of milk that we reduce our carbon emissions by 30% by 2030, and on all our processing sites similar, that we cut back to 30% minimum by 2030. So the company is totally focused and working closely with farmers to achieve.
And that 30% reduction target, John, will Glanbia support farmers in reaching that target? Because obviously there's a lot of work to get to that reduction.
Yes, and that's why we're here today, and that's why we're probably launching a series of webinars now over the next few weeks and few months in Glanbia Ireland. And I think Shane here is living proof that this can be done. Like Shane, he's taken the guidance. There's not rocket science. He hasn't reinvented the wheel. He's doing the good things well, the low emission slurry spreading, the little bit less nitrogen, just change more lime. There's a lot of practical issues here. And interestingly, in Bordbia, I just read your report where they had 400 farmers who adopted all these measures, and actually they increased their profitability. So look, we'll be working closely with our farmers throughout this. We have, as I say, a specialised hub with Thomas Ryan, and Thomas will be here speaking later on, and he'll go into more detail on our living proof. But we work with outside bodies like Teagasc, the department, ASAP, Bordbia, National Dairy Council, so totally committed. And to be honest with you, we have an open door with our farmers. Our farmers are committed also to do that, please.
Very good, thank you, John. So Cavanagh, the National Dairy Council does a lot of research similar to Bordbia with consumers. In terms of the latest research you've done, what are consumers saying to you about dairy farmers in Ireland and sustainability and climate change? What's the research findings telling us about what consumers are thinking?
Yeah, we've been tracking consumers' view of Irish dairy since 2017, and you can actually categorise it in under two headings. And the first is the Irish dairy product portfolio, which currently is at its highest level of regard among Irish consumers. And by that, the nutritional contribution of dairy within the diet, the recognition of the positive impact that plays, is truly understood among Irish consumers. 78% would deem dairy as being essential within their diet. All the scores around, health benefits, calcium, protein, very, very positive. The only watch out is that when you look at the under 25 consumer group, they would not be as convinced around the word essential, and that's a communication challenge for the NDC to ensure that the recognition of the nutritional contribution is understood across all the generations. And
do some of those younger consumers in particular see sustainability as a reason not to consume? Is it a barrier to consumption of dairy in the research? Is there?
Great question. Back in 2017, the barrier to consumption among the younger group were three things: fat content, perception of allergy, and intolerance. The actual concern around fat has significantly diminished. So the comprehension around the percentage of fat within the dairy product portfolio has a much better level of comprehension and is no longer a barrier. What we are beginning to see, though, is that the environmental questions the younger consumer has left unaddressed could become a barrier to purchase. It's not yet a barrier to purchase, which brings me on then to that second area that we look at with consumers, which is their view of the production system. And it's a slightly different story here, because you say 84% of consumers recognise Ireland as being a really suitable country to produce dairy, and that's a recognition of rainfall and grass growth and, you know, this food producing island. But only 57% would say that the production system is sustainable. So there's a bit of a disconnect between this 84% recognition of a good place to produce dairy and a 57% confidence level around the sustainable credentials. And what that's saying to us is there is a real need for education among consumers of what Shane and his fellow farmers are doing on farm. And actually that's reinforced. Only 1 in 10 consumers say they actually know a dairy farm or have been on a dairy farm. Big education challenge.
Yeah, and that's obviously the NDC focuses on communicating that consumer to that consumer that's not reaching farms. Shane, from your point of view, maybe it's frustrating, is it at times, to hear some of the commentary around dairy when you look at what you're doing here on the farm? I presume you're very interested and committed to sustainability based on what I've seen so far.
Yeah, without a doubt. It is frustrating, and like I'm part of a discussion group here in Kildare, the Sustainable Dairy Group, and I suppose as part of that group there's farmers in Kildare and Laois in it, and I suppose like you're looking to produce milk in his you know, an animal welfare, you know, best practice possible, environmental, you know, the best standards you can, you know, with the best farming practices, while trying to make a return for yourself, you know, to keep families going, families living off the farm. Also, you're looking to, you know, to provide employment in the locality, and then I suppose the most important thing at the end of all that, you're looking to have it in a place where you can leave it on to the next generation, you know. So basically we have the farm, you're trying to improve it and then leave it in its best shape as possible. So it's within our interest, like in this whole side of water quality, all that, like we're here, we're drinking the water, you know, you want it, you know, you won't, you do farm to high standard. And I suppose sometimes when you hear, you know, from outside that maybe, you know, that you're not doing it as well, you know, as we actually are, it is frustrating, you know, but I think we are addressing it, you know.
And what about from a farmer, you know, for a farmer watching this morning who is hearing all of this about reducing their carbon footprint? I mean, are you seeing that as a huge problem or an opportunity in terms of on your farm? Or how do you actually go about reducing your carbon footprint? In simple terms, like how do you actually do it? What's the...
Yeah. Well, like it actually, like a lot of the measures that you take actually result in more profitability, and it'll actually return money to you, like, you know, like simple things like, you know, using the trail and shoe in the spring to you know, utilise the slurry better, that reduces your nitrogen use, and that so saves money, you know. You know, things like getting cows to grass longer, you know, it reduces the workload and the cows are healthier and happier being out, you know. And like grass is what sets us apart in Ireland, and it's just maximising that. You know.
So for you, it's an opportunity to reduce costs while also reducing your carbon footprint at the same time.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, very good. The questions are starting to come in, and you have the text number on your screen. To John Murphy, has Glanbia any plans to develop an organic sector? Good, easy question to start, John.
At the moment, we don't have any plans to develop an organic sector. I suppose we have a huge volume of milk, but it's something we would be open to doing in the future, because there's no question that that's the direction I see even announced in the last couple of days. You know, the
policy framework,
swinging towards that sector. So that's something we wouldn't close our door to, but something you need a scale to make it work. And maybe in future, wouldn't rule it out.
Very good. Deirdre, just back to you in terms of you know, how Irish companies are using sustainability, say when we go to trade fairs around the world and stuff like that. I mean, is it something that Origin Green is on the market now for a number of years? Is it a brand that's working, I suppose, in the market for Irish companies to win business?
Yeah, great question. And look, 9 years into the programme, you know, it's much more significant now even than when it was launched. So, you know, 9 years ago, it was probably a real front runner in terms of, you know, really ahead of the market. And we really had to do a good job in explaining even to our customers around the importance of sustainability. Now we see that it's a real pull. The demand is there. There's increased requests for more detailed information on data, emissions and progress and proof and progress. So it's absolutely high up on the agenda from that customer perspective. And then how we present ourselves in the market is really, you know, under the orange and green umbrella and trade shows and missions. And, you know, there is that recognition, you know, as I said earlier, you know, 60% of customers globally would recognise Ireland as a source of sustainable production. So now it's really, you know, we have to kind of row in with the proof points, the progress and the data, you know, to show that. So it's absolutely top of the agenda, and the pace is, I have to say, you know, increasing.
And I presume feeding the reports back to farmers and the information back to farmers is a key piece of that journey as well, in terms of giving the information for farmers like Shane to be able to utilise the data from the visits, you know, in terms of the Sustainable Dairy Assurance Scheme, in terms of learning from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that one of our lessons learned really is that, you know, we need to increase and work collaboratively in terms of sharing that information on the carbon footprint. And I suppose the farm feedback reports that are available now digitally as well, if people want to access them. And, you know, it does try to give simplified guidance. We'd work very closely with Teagasc on developing those. So it is a key resource, but again, you know, we do need to coordinate and really amplify that message around all the various different practices, which is why today is great that Shane's sharing, you know, what he's doing and how simple measures can help as well. And of course, in time, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, hopefully we'll have bridged that innovation gap and things like feed additives will become more accessible. But there's a lot we can do now. So hopefully that's a resource available to start that journey. The
comments are coming in already, ticking fast. It's a great thing about having the technology. If the research shows 20% are prepared to pay more, that means 80% aren't prepared to pay more. I suppose it depends how the question is phrased as well, in terms of will you pay extra, because I think, as you said, maybe sometimes people choose a product like a Kerrygold brand in Germany, for example, they're paying a higher price for it routinely when they choose the brand. Yeah,
and I think, you know, it is that piece around the increasing an expectation of food producers that things are sustainably produced. So there is that expectation there in the market that sustainable production should be the norm with the increased climate and biodiversity crisis. And then I think the next step for us is which attributes will consumers pay more for, and how we can communicate and bring that message and engage with the consumers so they will pay more, that premium for things like, as I said, grass-fed, animal welfare, things that they can understand more. You know, the consumer probably has a short attention span when they go to market to pick something up, which is hence the importance of the likes of the Kerrygold, the branding around it.
Yeah. Zoe, I'm going to come back to you on one of the ones in terms of the research and what animal welfare, maybe sometimes when people talk about sustainability, animal welfare doesn't always come to mind. I think, would I be right in saying from your research, it's actually one of the first things consumers think about in terms of when they want to consume dairy products, that animal welfare has to be good and they have to be convinced that it's good.
Absolutely. In fact, our research showed us that, you know, it is 66% of consumers have a positive regard towards Irish dairy farmers' animal welfare standards. 10% don't. You know, we want to have that 10% down at zero. And I think as part of this education programme that I'm referring to, fundamentally where the dairy sector is at is this tension or debate between the nutritional contribution and the environmental impact. And simply put, no food is on a consumer's plate without an environmental impact. And I think the body of work that we have to undertake is the education programme, mimic what we've done on nutrition when it comes to production, and grass-fed. And when you get to grass-fed is inherently animals outdoors grazing, and something that Shane is particularly good at here on this farm is outdoor grazing. And, you know, for every additional 10 days the animals are outdoors, it's a 1% reduction in emissions. So I think this whole piece of this outdoor system, this family farmed outdoor system, will ultimately, with the appropriate education and communication to the consumer, become the badge of excellence when it comes to going after the premium in the marketplace. But that's going to take time, and it's like a brand building exercise. But ultimately, we want consumers in Ireland, and then through Board Bia's work internationally, knowing when they see Irish dairy on shelf, that of itself means grass-fed, outdoor grazing, which implies high animal welfare standards, nutritional contribution, and, you know, without being arrogant, I believe by 2030 Ireland will be the best dairy producing nation in the world because of our credentials. We need to earn the recognition with the public, and that involves communication, marketing, education, and it's taking the proof points that Shane has here on his farm today, and many other Irish dairy farmers have, and actually having a dialogue with the consumer in a way that they understand. And we need to get our language much more comprehensive with the consumer, and almost draw a parallel with them gardening. You know, you tend to the soil, you water appropriately, you apply plant food selectively and appropriately, and then those flowers bloom. And dairy farming is actually very, very similar.
Shane, I mean, is that resonating with you in terms of you know, in terms of communicating what you're doing here in the farm? I presume things like animal welfare, for example, are important to you. You're not ignorant or unaware of the importance of animal welfare. I presume it's something that's really important to you.
Yeah, without a doubt. And like for me, like we take, you know, farmers take great pride in, you know, the milk we're delivering, you know. And for any customer going in, you know, picking out milk to have more milk, you know, super milks or any milk with the NDC logo on it, it's, you know, in the background there's a farmer there that's working and trying to get the highest standards possible, like, you know, to send that milk in, you know. And it's great pride when you see that being drank, and, you know, but the animal welfare on the farm, like, you have to look after the animals, or, you know, you won't be a you know, you won't stay in business, you know what I mean? It's so important, you know. Yeah,
so something we need to just do more to communicate.
Just to get out there, because I feel like the farmers, we are doing the work on the ground, and we're doing it, and we are sustainable, and, you know, we just need to get the message out there, you know, what we are doing, you know.
What we're doing. John, I think that's something I've often heard you talk about in terms of going out there, telling our story better, in terms of that the consumer understands more what's actually happening on farms, as opposed to some of the noise that we hear on the media sometimes.
Absolutely, Pat. And look at we in Glanbia Ireland, we see this, I suppose, this challenge as an opportunity. You know, we do produce the best sustainably produced nutritious products in the world. There's a captive market for them. So, you know, we have the lowest in carbon emissions in the world. We have a brilliant story to tell with our family farms, our low carbon. And genuinely, I think there's an opportunity here, a great opportunity for Irish dairy, for Glanbia, for dairy farmers. And I think that there's an opportunity here. And, you know, we will work with our farmers closely every step of the way, you know, to reap that opportunity.
Okay, look, I know the time is against us, so I'm going to wrap up this panel now. I want to thank Deirdre Ryan, John Murphy, Zoe Kavanagh. Shane O'Loughlin is going to stay with us for the next session, where we'll focus on what's actually happening on the farm in terms of reducing the carbon footprint and making improvements at a practical level. And to transition over to that panel, we're now going to play a short video which will showcase some of the actions that Shane is taking on his farm.
So for the next few minutes, we're going to talk about how Shane is taking positive environmental actions in the area of nutrient management planning, herd health and performance, and the whole area of biodiversity. Shane, like all other Glanbia Ireland suppliers, are members of Board Bia's SDAS, or Sustainable Dairy Assurance Scheme as it's known. As part of SDAS, Shane's farm is audited every 18 months, and the productivity and the environmental performance of his farm is assessed and benchmarked. The good news for Shane is that the latest SDAS sustainability report from Board Bia indicates that he has reduced by 6% the carbon footprint associated with every litre of milk he produces here on the farm. Let's have a closer look at his farm sustainability report to understand how he's achieving this 6% reduction in the carbon footprint associated with his milk.
The three key actions that I use here, which have resulted in reducing carbon emissions by 6%, are the first one is increasing EBI. The second one is I have a nutrient management plan in place, and then the third one is trying to keep the cows out of grass as long as possible. So the EBI of the herd here is 161, which means the cows here are €161 more profitable than the average cow. The replacement heifers have an EBI of 186, so we're improving the herd efficiency the whole time. And for every €10 that I can increase my herd EBI by, that reduces carbon emissions by 1%. So we soil sample 25% of the farm every year. Over a 4-year period, you have a good picture of where the farm is at. With the soil results, we're able to see areas of the farm that need more fertiliser or less fertiliser, and that helps us to target the areas that need it and minimise losses. On the most recent audit, we're spreading slurry in the spring. We've increased from 25% to 30%, and basically the target is to go further with that, using the trail and shoe and using other low emissions devices just to help use the nitrogen we have here more efficiently. The cows here go to grass as close to the 1st of February as conditions will allow. We try to keep them out then 300 days till the end of November. The key thing with that is it's the most economical way I have of feeding the cows. Also, every extra week I can keep them at grass, reduces the greenhouse gas emissions by 1%.
The Protecting Farmland Pollination CIP is actually managed through the National Biodiversity Data Centre, and basically we work with 40 farmers across a different range of farm types, from beef, dairy, tillage and mixed, and we just want to demonstrate that Irish farms can become pollinator and therefore biodiversity friendly without actually negatively affecting your agricultural productivity. Here on Shane's farm you can see low cost, small actions you can take to really improve pollinator diversity, but also biodiversity in general on his farm. And it's anything from, his hedgerows, not cutting them very frequently, leaving them on a 3 to 5 year cutting rotation is brilliant. It allows the trees to bloom, giving pollinators some food. Also in terms of fencing off your field margins, that also allows a lot of flowers to kind of come up and bloom as well, and giving them an extra food source. So as part of the Protecting Farmland Pollination CIP, Shane is being recognised and rewarded for this biodiversity area.
Okay, very good. Great overview there in that video from Shane. So I'll now introduce our second panel. I've got Tom O'Dwyer, who's head of the signpost programme in Teagasc. I have Thomas Ryan here on my right, who's the sustainability manager with Glanbia Ireland. Shane McElroy, who's familiar to many Glanbia farmers, who's head of technical development in Glanbia Ireland, and Shane O'Loughlin is with us, who was on our previous panel. And again, Shane is our host farmer, and thank him again for having us here on the farm this morning. So in this panel, we want to look more kind of the on-farm actions that are happening, and maybe Teagasc is front and centre in terms of change in Ireland and knowledge transfer and research and development for farmers. And Tom O'Dwyer, you're the head of the recently announced signpost programme, and maybe just first of all you might actually tell us what is the signpost programme and what is it going to set out to achieve?
The signpost programme is a new Teagasc-led initiative with over 50 partners across the Irish agri-food sector, including Glanbia and the National Dairy Council. And it was set up with the ambition of helping, supporting, enabling Irish farmers to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, but also to farm more sustainably. So also to improve water quality, to enhance biodiversity, to reduce ammonia emissions, and I think most importantly to ensure that farmers and farming remains profitable for Irish farmers.
And how are you going to transfer the knowledge to farmers? Like, what's is it going to be one big research farm in the centre of the country? How are you going about?
So we've decided to make a network of somewhere around 110 signpost demonstration farmers to be central to the delivery of the signpost programme. We've done this for a couple of reasons. Demonstration farmers have worked very well for us in the past in terms of our knowledge transfer initiatives. And also research bears out that farmers learn from other farmers. So we wanted to set up a network of farmers across the country. Glanbia, as a partner in the signpost programme, has 11 farmers that are part of the Glanbia Future Farm programme, but are also part of the signpost programme. And they're spread across the Glanbia territory. So what that means in effect is that we have 11 farmers. So it means that all Glanbia suppliers have an opportunity to engage with a signpost farmer at a reasonably local level. And they can also then choose to follow the progress of individual signpost farmers over the duration of the programme.
And can anyone tune in and follow the advice, or do you have to be a Teagasc client?
No, absolutely. The information will be available to anybody that wants to follow the individual farmers or attend events. So we have a website set up. We have an electronic newsletter, so people can sign up to our electronic newsletter. We'll be communicating the results from the program through our podcasts and webinars, and we'll be holding events on the farms. Indeed, we've just finished a series of 3 events with Glanbia on 3 of the signpost farms in the past number of weeks.
Very good. Thomas Ryan, in terms of what Glanbia Ireland farmers are actually doing on their farms to improve sustainability, what kind of actions are farmers taking to make changes?
Okay, I think I listened to what Shane said in the first session, and he said, look, we are doing the work, you know, and for me it resonates with us within Glanbia Ireland, because sustainability isn't a new journey for us. I mean, as founding members of the Borbia Origin Green programme that Deirdre spoke about earlier on, you know, in addition to that, I think leading in the whole area of water quality, being driving on the ASSIP, the Agriculture Sustainability Support Advisory Programme in the area of water quality, animal health and welfare with our 2020 Beef Club, and even Farm Gen, but it's not enough. I mean, as Deirdre also said, we are in a climate and biodiversity emergency. When it comes to water quality, it's fair to say, by European standards, we're in a good place, but there are markers and indicators of a need for action. And this really formed the genesis of the coming forward in July of this year with our Living Proof Sustainability Strategy. Our commitment to farming, food and the future. It's our company-wide sustainability strategy, supporting our suppliers, specifically focusing in on areas that are going to deliver both economic and environmental dividend on farm. So what does that look like? When it comes to water quality, we have 3 dedicated ASSIP advisors working with suppliers to ensure that there's ASSIP water quality plans in place with our suppliers in the EPA identified water quality hotspots or priority areas for action. We know, Pat, the whole area of soil health is so important in terms of supporting both grass growth and animal performance. And to that end, we're working with our suppliers to ensure that every one of them have a nutrient management plan in place. And indeed, biodiversity, Michelle, in the previous clip, referred to the tremendous actions that Shane is taking in the whole area of biodiversity here. We're on a journey as part of a programme called Operation Biodiversity to have 100,000 native trees and hedging planted by our suppliers by the end of this year. And we're going to get there. I mean, it's incredible to think that within 12 months, we have over 85,000 native trees and hedging planted. So I've great confidence from the actions that have been taken and the journey we're on as part of our Living Proof Sustainability Strategy.
I presume, Thomas, around this time of year, you mentioned soil health, you'd be keen to see as many suppliers as possible getting engaged in soil testing and using those results to manage their nutrients, reduce their fertiliser bills, grow more grass, better crops.
Absolutely. If there's one action we could all do, it's look at our soil and take soil samples. This is the time of the year to do it. There is concern around fertiliser into next year, and I think the only way to target your fertiliser use is to know your baseline, and that means get your soil sample done, complete your nutrient management plan, get a good quality tailored fertiliser plan done on the back of it. So if there's one nugget, perhaps a timely right now, the importance of soil testing. I think Shane maybe might go into more detail, but he said to me earlier, he's soil testing 25% of his farm here every year. And he's seeing the dividend from that in terms of grass growth yield, in terms of not having to supplement a higher level of concentrates. So it's these basic actions that are going to be good for the environment and good for farm level profitability.
Tom O'Dwyer, I see you nodding there in terms of the soil testing. I presume that's a key one in terms of the signpost programme and nutrient management.
Absolutely. We've embarked this autumn on a campaign to soil sample all of the signpost farmers at a very intensive level and also in a very precise way. And those results will be available for the farm advisors, our own Teagasc advisors, to work with the farmers to prepare detailed and, as Thomas said, tailored nutrient management plans for each farm, because the fertiliser recommendations for one farm will differ from another farm. It's not a case of one size fits all, And the other thing that we will be embarking on as well in early next year will be to take slurry samples and analyse the slurry as well to I suppose show to farmers the value of the nutrients that are in their animal slurries.
That's not something, Tom, that would be that prevalent, would it, in terms of analysing slurry samples and measuring how much NP and K is in the slurry?
Probably not routinely, but it is an analysis that's available, and I believe that and I think Shane will comment on it. That once the farmer realises the quantity of NP and K that's in the slurry, well, then they can take that into account when they're formulating their fertiliser application strategy. And in the absence of that knowledge, you just don't know. So there's a kind of a case of, well, maybe it isn't there. So we want to provide the proof that this product, this slurry, is a valuable resource.
Okay, Shane, nutrient management, slurry management. We hear a lot of talk about farmers transitioning to low emission slurry spreading, but also positively getting better results out of that. Is that your experience here in this farm?
Oh, without a doubt. I suppose through the STAS audit, I've increased my slurry in the spring by 5%. Up to 30%, but there's big scope going forward, and we try to get up to 70%. The way we'll use that is we get there is using trail and shoe in the spring. I suppose we do build grass in the autumn to have grass there in February for the cows, but the problem is when you're using splash plate technology, it sours the grass for the cows. It get hard to graze after, but with the use of trail and shoe now, you're able to spread those higher covers. And so you're able to increase the slurry spread in the spring, but also be able to reduce your slurry or your nitrogen use as a result, which will help costs.
And fertiliser costs at the moment certainly would be encouraging you to...
Oh, without a doubt. And I suppose, look, with the soil samples as well, we'd be getting results back, and the first thing we'd look at is the pH of the ground, and lime is very cheap, and if you can spread lime to get your pH up, you'll have more minerals available to you there to grow grass without spreading fertiliser. And then as well as that, you're able to target areas of the farm that you need maybe more or less fertiliser, because we don't want runoff. You don't want to be losing it, because it's money you're putting out there, and you want to keep it there to help growing the grass, because that's our competitive advantage.
What are the other practical things you're doing on the farm? I know you mentioned some of them on the video, things like a longer grazing season. Tell me about EBI, the breeding index. I mean, how is that going to reduce your carbon footprint?
Yeah, well, the EBI of my herd is 161. Through the Glanbia Monitor Farm programme, I was in with Richie O'Brien. We targeted EBI. If you increase the herd EBI by €10, you're able to reduce your emissions by 1%. So we're just targeting that, and what we find with that is your cows are becoming more profitable, they're more efficient, they're calving, once a year, and you're able to get them out to grass for 300 days, and it's a win-win, So it's
a win-win where you've lower carbon footprint, but you're delivering more economic sustainability in terms of the farm income.
And then on the biodiversity side of things, I suppose I'm part of DIP there. There's a group in Kildare, and I suppose when they came out, the thing they seen on farm is the amount of work that's going on farms that you're doing already without realising it. And it's just simple things like not cutting hedges every year, and maybe reducing your spraying. It's having a huge effect on the area.
Is that something you're conscious of in terms of spraying and hedgerows and management of hedgerows for wildlife?
Well, without a doubt, but it's more, I suppose, it's changing your own attitude on it. For years, I suppose, you would see a tidy farm, you look out, you wouldn't see a weed, and you just see green grass, and now you sort of have to get used to, you might see a nettle or a dock, but it's not, the cows are still milking as well, there's no issues that way, but it's just your own mentality changing,
Yes, it can be hard to adjust to a group of nettles. Can be very good for biodiversity, but you, as a farmer, sometimes you don't think about it that way. Shane, herd health and breeding, and how it interacts with carbon footprint and sustainability. I mean, does herd health have any impact on a carbon footprint?
Absolutely, Pat. I mean, the animal is a central role in terms of the overall farm efficiency and in terms of the ability to lower the carbon footprint. If you look at three main pillars of it, I suppose, animal breeding, animal feeding, and animal health, and Shane is really excelling in all of them here on the farm. So Shane is driving on with the EBI, the Economic Breeding Index, and that's to produce a cow that's suited to the grazing system, to the seasonal. We need the cows to calve early. We need them to milk for a long lactation. 161 your herd average, Shane, excellent. But your calves coming on 186 from last year's calves and 219 from this year's calves. So you're really driving it on. You've got a 92% in calf rate this year, so that's giving you choices when it comes to replacements and a cow longevity. We want the cows to stay in the herd as long as possible. That's the efficiency of it all, so that we don't need as many replacements. And then you've got the cows calving very early in the season, so you're making use of a long lactation and maximising the milk solids. But I suppose from an animal health perspective, the cow has the ability to utilise the grass and use that breeding, that genetics that they have. But animal health can be the blocker that gets in the way of that. And so it's about managing the health of the herd. And you're using the herd disease screening service through Glanbia for the last 10 years, Shane, and it's identifying what diseases are present in the herd and that you need to take control of, and you are taking control of those that are needed. But importantly, you're negative to a couple of diseases, IBR, and you don't have fluke here on the farm as well, so you don't need to treat, which is of course saving on treatments that are costly, but also could produce anthelmintic resistance if not used responsibly. There was the last piece then is the feeding of the animals and the animal nutrition. And look, we're all about maximising the grass utilised in the diet, and you're absolutely doing that here in the farm, Shane. Almost 300 days at grass and 97% grass fed. So look, it's about utilising that grass to reduce the carbon footprint, absolutely, but there's always room for further efficiency gains. And to that end, there's a need for research for new feed additives that'll support the further reductions from nutritional. Is there
going to be a silver bullet? I hear a lot of farmers talking about that, research will solve the carbon emissions problem on dairy farms by, a feed additive, for example, that'll reduce the amount of methane that cows belch out. Is that, you're a scientist now, Shane, is that in the pipeline? Is it a year away, 5 years away?
Yeah, it's a fair old challenge, Pat. Look, the problem with methane is that in terms of the as a greenhouse gas, it's 28 times more, carries the weight of 28 times more than carbon dioxide. So methane, as cows are ruminants, they belch out the methane, and that's one of the challenges. So in terms of developing actives, and there are actives out there that can reduce methane, there's no doubt about it. One of the challenges is actually our positive, our strength, and that's the grass-based system. Our cows are out in the field most of the day. They come in to get milk twice a day, and that's when we can give them the feed additive. Unfortunately, the challenge is getting that feed additive to work for the 12 hours in between, and that's where the research comes in. And there's a lot of work going on as part of the Vista Milk programme at the minute. We're partnering with Chagas and NutriBio and a number of others to identify the additives that can work in this grass-based system.
So Glanbia is involved in that research with those partners, in terms of trying to prove it. So you're saying there's something, but it's not. There's nothing available today, is there, that we can use?
No, there's not today, and there's a lot of work being done at the minute. There are products that work in other systems, so your TMR, your total mixed ration, where the cows are indoors and they're feeding it all day. The problem is that the rumen acclimatizes, the rumen microbacteria acclimatise to get over the fact that you've just changed the rumen microflora. So we need something that will be there and work for the 12-hour period in between milkings.
Thanks, Jane. Thomas, a question has come to you in terms of just, I think it's like from a farmer point of view, in terms of the challenge, all of this information coming at the farmer, a lot of it seems to be kind of critical. Do you get that sense, that farmers are being bombarded with sort of, you need to do this and you need to do that? And have you any kind of sympathy for farmers in that context of being bombarded with being told to change their behaviours?
Yeah, I think farmers strongly feel misunderstood and misrepresented in terms of the suite of actions and the tangible actions they're actually taking on their farm. And going back to Shane's words again, we are doing the work, right? And there's a high level of frustration that the positive actions that are being taken are not being heard within all the noise. And that's not to say that further action isn't required. It is required. But I'm confident, based on the desire and the willingness to change and adapt and the agility of a farming community, that we're really up for the challenge. But I think what I would say is those who are most critical of our farming community are also the ones who are going to be depending on the farming community to deliver the change required. And on the basis of that, it's easier work together than shout at each other in terms of being productive and delivering on the long journey ahead.
The MAC curve is a thing we often heard talk about. And some farmers say to me, I don't understand it. Maybe Tom, you might come in on this one as well. But Thomas, like in terms of at a practical level, what are you doing to help farmers better understand what the MAC curve actually means, at a practical level?
So maybe Tom mightn't agree, but what I'm doing is I'm stopping talking about the MAC. I mean, the Teagasc MAC curve stands for the Marginal Abatement Cost Curve, which I call the Teagasc Climate Plan. And you know what? Let's stop talking about it, but let's drill in on the key measures within it. The Economic Breeding Index, right? That Shane McElroy and Shane O'Loughlin have been referring to around the positive journey that Shane O'Loughlin is on here, increasing his EBI number, reducing his carbon footprint and improving environmental performance. The whole area of low emission slurry spreading, the whole area of nutrient management planning, extended grazing. So perhaps, the MAC is being thrown out as a panacea. Perhaps park the MAC and talk about the key enablers and the key measures, looking at, if anyone takes a chance to look back over that short video of how Shane here is delivering that 6%. That's the MAC in action. That's drilling it down. And if we stop talking about the MAC and drill in on the key actions, I don't know, Tom, would you?
No, I'd agree with that. And the analogy that I use is that the MAC is our toolbox. It's, and the MAC is the methodology with which Teagasc has presented the toolbox to the wider community, but I use the term toolbox, and the enabling actions that Thomas has referred to, I refer to them as the tools in the toolbox. And I'm not sure if you mentioned, perhaps I didn't quite pick it up, but protected urea is a key one.
We haven't talked about that one now, yeah.
Yeah, if we look at the toolbox, so I won't use the term MAC, but if we look at the toolbox, protected urea is the one that we in Teagasc believe is the lowest hanging fruit in that toolbox. It's the easiest one to get, and it's immediate, and it can make the biggest difference in terms of our emissions. So there's a range of tools in the toolbox. Every different farmer can pick different tools, and we would like to go back to your earlier point, or the earlier previous question to Thomas, in terms of do farmers feel put upon. In Teagasc, we'd like to work with farmers to design a plan suitable for their farm. So tailor the solution for the farm. Some farmers are already using protected urea, or already got clover, already using low emission slurry spreading. That's great. Then we have to work with those farmers and see maybe what else can be done, to further improve the sustainability of the farming operation. So we want to work with farmers, design a tailored plan, and then support them to deliver it.
What sort of reaction are you getting, Tom, from farmers? Obviously you've a large number of farmers now joining the programme, getting involved. What's kind of reaction when you're engaging with the farmers? What's the reaction like?
Well, with the 100-odd signpost farmers, as one of the previous speakers has said, they're all very much up for the challenge, and want to know what they can do on their farm, and I believe are buying into the whole objective of reducing emissions and farming more sustainably. And then the wider audience, the wider farming population, I think there's still a lot of questions being asked by farmers, very, very genuine questions in relation to, how emissions are measured, why certain elements of their farming practices are included, are they going to get credit for sequestration? So at the moment, I think there's an inquisitiveness to find out, what exactly are we being counted for? And to understand that, I think we have to help farmers with that, and then we have to enable them to think in terms of, well, now I understand it, what am I going to do about it? So for me, I think the things I'd say to farmers, 3 things I'd say to farmers: 1, get informed; 2, make it personal, so bring it back down to your own farm; and 3, get active. That's what I'd be recommending to farmers.
Thomas, I'm just picking up a point that Tom mentioned about, because I'm often asked the same question about sequestration, right? Don't fully understand it. What is it? And why, at the moment, farmers tell me they're not getting credit for the carbon that's being captured in their hedgerows or in their soil. Is there science there to prove that? Sure. Or where is that at?
Isn't it a huge frustration? You get up in the morning, you milk cows, you go out and you look, and you send them out to the paddock, you look across the field, you see the hedgerows, you see our permanent pastures. Ireland has the largest permanent pastures in Europe, and you intuitively see the carbon that's stored in that, and yet when it comes to the sector, it's the methane, it's the bad emissions that are counted and not getting credit. I think part of the signpost programme that Tom referred to is seeking to develop the research to answer that question, so we rightly get the value of the carbon that's sequestered and stored. Because when it comes to the climate and the sustainability discussion, we have to paint the full picture. And right now, there's a gap. Right now, that carbon sequestration piece, Pat, is missing. I think this is why we're proud of our partnership on the Signpost programme, because this research question has to be answered as part of this, so as farmers get the full value and the full story when it comes to sustainability.
But what are you doing about it? Well, are you putting a plan in place to capture that data? Like, is Teagasc or Glanbia going to?
So every one of our farms that are participating in the Living Proof Future Farm programme, which is a follow-on from the programme that Shane is part of. Every one of them is getting what's called a LiDAR analysis done of the carbon that's stored in their hedgerows. That's happening this year, and it's being repeated in 2025. So an analysis can be taken on as regards the carbon stock and the movement of carbon stock over time. In addition to that, there's deep soil carbon analysis being done on each of the participating farms. And for a number of our suppliers, there's what we call flux towers, carbon flux towers being installed in order to be able to monitor and measure the movement of carbon in the atmosphere. This is, if you like, the tools and the mechanisms that are being put in place as part of that research. It's detailed. I wish we had the answer sooner. I've been as patient as I can with Tom and with Teagasc, but we do need it because we do need the full picture for our suppliers.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a key one. Shane McElroy, I'm just watching the clock here, and we're coming near the end of our session. The hour certainly flies by. Shane, to you, obviously, you've been and are dealing with farmers in your job previously, obviously, as vet, now technical development. In terms of your main messages to farmers in this area, in terms of to reassure farmers what they need to do, but also to kind of encourage them. What's the priorities? You when you're speaking to farmers, what's the kind of main messages?
Yeah, sure. It's Pat. It's about identifying where the farm is at. There's no doubt there's many strengths on all of our farms, but there are weaknesses. There are further areas that can be strengthened. So it's identify where it's at. The Board Be a Farm Sustainability Report identifies that as a short report. It gives out the list of actions that can be taken to really make a difference when it comes to reducing the carbon footprint, and then taking action like planting trees and hedgerows through Operation Biodiversity to improve the biodiversity on the farms, and then just keeping an eye to the water quality. In the reality, EPA reports are going to keep coming. If the water quality isn't where we need it to be, it'll be shown to us. So we need to take action in each of those areas to absolutely reduce the carbon footprint, maximise biodiversity, and just watch out for the water quality. So it's identify where the farm's at and take the actions.
I think a good reminder there on the biodiversity in terms of the time of year now, in terms of thinking of doing some planting, in terms of native trees and hedgerows in corners of patches around the farmyard and stuff. I mean, white thorns.
Absolutely. This is the time of the year to be.
I presume you'll give us a good deal on them.
That's right. And in fairness, there's a bit of internal politics on that because it is such a good deal. So absolutely, farmers should be.
You'll have to sort out the internal politics and make them available. Shane, and from your point of view, look, we're coming near an end, I suppose. Look, as part of, summarising, really, we're talking about it. You're doing it. You've the cows across the road here. In terms of the key measures now, what's in your plan in terms of what you're going to do now in the coming months? In terms of, what are you focused on in terms of the improvements you're going to make to improve its sustainability?
Yeah, like the key one is in the spring with slurry using the trail and chew. Yeah. Making sure to get the cows out to grass for the 300 days, and then I suppose. The other one is just, biodiversity. Just, keep just, like the hedgerows, leave them grow within reason, and that sort of thing. I suppose, like from the customer point of view, buying the milk, I suppose, like we all do that SDAS audit. Like there's 300 checks, like the amount of, but from environmental point of view, nitrate, like there's such an amount of regulation there, and the things we have to do. Yeah. And it's just, it definitely is delivering a very
maybe
green
something
product.
There, maybe for any consumers watching, Shane, you might explain a little bit what you actually do in terms of compliance, in terms of the amount of checks and actual, to ensure milk leaves here to go to Glanbia, but in other words, what checks are in place to ensure that milk is safe and that you're protecting water quality, animal welfare, biodiversity? Is there checks and balances?
Yeah, like every 18 months you have a full farm audit. So it's a full day with the Board Be inspector, and you have a range of checks. There's 300 to 400 checks on it. from your water quality, animal welfare, the milk quality the whole way through. They look at the parlour, and then I suppose before the lorry leaves here, like you've TBC checks, you've cell counts, there's a wide range of testing done, and it's there's no doubt about it in my mind that the milk we produce here is the greenest and best, and I'd go as far as say in the world. There's no doubt in my mind.
You've travelled. You've seen other countries. I presume you're very proud of the product we produce here in Ireland.
Without. Like I've seen systems where cows are indoors all year round. I've seen places where they're out all year round with no environmental constraints at all. And then you come home here and you just see how well the farmers are doing it, how proud they are in their product. And it would that's why when you do see a bit of negative feedback coming, you want to just reassure the customers that we are doing it as best we can, and like there is room to improvement, of course there is, but we're willing to do it.
Yeah, and look, fair play to you. You're doing your bit in terms of opening your farm up to us this morning, even for this morning's event, and that's much appreciated. Just to wrap up, Thomas, I might come back to you just for one final comment about this series of webinars. This is the first of a series, so what's going to be involved in the series?
Okay, so this is the kick-off of a series of fortnightly webinars. You'll all be relieved to know from here on out the webinars are only a half an hour long, but we delve more into the detail. So what we've had here is today a really good discussion around the big picture sustainability piece and maybe what's happening here on Shane's farm. So the next live webinar is taking place on the 4th of November, where myself and Lauren Shalhoub from Teagasc will look at the question of key actions that you can take on the farm in order to further reduce your carbon footprint. And after that, then there'll be a follow-up webinars around the whole area of breeding for economic and environmental performance, and there'll be webinars then around water quality, actions to be taken on farm to improve water quality. There's biodiversity in another session, and we'll be joined by representatives from ICBF, from the National Biodiversity Data Centre, from Borbia, from Teagasc. This is really a collaboration of excellence and knowledge. As I suppose we get into the weeds of it, and we delve into the detail to try and provide that gap, that knowledge gap that farmers and the knowledge gap and the direction that suppliers are yearning for. And look, we've had really good feedback so far in terms of the schedule that we've shared with our chairman, John Murphy, and board and others. So the signs are positive. Every fortnight, starting with the 4th of November at 11 o'clock, a half-hour webinar.
Very good. Tom's good wrap up there. And look, on behalf of the audience, I want to thank our panel, Tom O'Dwyer, Thomas Ryan, Shane McElroy. I want to particularly thank Shane O'Loughlin for hosting us here on the farm this morning and putting up with us in terms of coming in and taking your time and your facilities. So much appreciated, Shane, and we're very thankful to you. I want to thank the European Milk Forum for their support for this event and the National Dairy Council. And personally, I want to thank my colleague James Brennan and Brian Short, who've been in the background here today, making sure this event can happen. And none of these events can take place without people like James doing the actual hard work. So look, with that, I'm going to close this morning's event. I want to thank you for tuning in. And as Thomas said, there'll be an opportunity to continue tuning in to these live webinars. Thank you very much.